In the year 1892, deep within the quiet, secluded hills of New England, there arose an edifice of foreboding presence, Blackwood Sanitarium. Conceived by the ambitious and esteemed Dr. Gerald Blackwood, this institution was envisioned as a beacon of revolutionary psychiatric treatment. Yet, from its very inception, it was clear that the sanitarium was destined to be more than just a hospital. It was to be a portal to the inexplicable and the macabre. The local townsfolk, steeped in generations of whispered lore, spoke in hushed tones of the land's ancient cursed history. They warned of vengeful spirits and unholy forces that lay dormant beneath the soil, a sacred burial ground defiled by the audacious construction. Dr. Blackwood, a man of science and rational thought, dismissed these superstitions with a wave of his hand, pressing forward with his grand design. As the first patients crossed the threshold of Blackwood Sanitarium, an oppressive atmosphere descended upon the institution. It was as if the very air grew heavier, laden with the weight of unseen dread. Disembodied whispers slithered through the long, dimly lit corridors, their unintelligible murmurs chilling the blood of all who heard them. Shadowy figures flitted at the periphery of vision, dissolving into darkness before one could discern their true form. The walls themselves seemed to pulse with a sinister vitality, as if alive with an ancient, malevolent consciousness. Among the staff, unease took root and flourished. Orderlies found themselves instinctively avoiding certain areas of the sanitarium, particularly the older, less used wings, where the shadows clung like a shroud. Nurses, once confident in their duties, now spoke in tremulous whispers of their patients' night terrors and premonitions, visions of grotesque beings and unspeakable horrors that lurked just beyond the veil of reality. Even the most stoic among them could not shake the feeling of being perpetually watched by unseen eyes. Dr. Blackwood, steadfast in his skepticism, attributed these phenomena to the disturbed minds of his patients. He clung to the belief that every ailment had a rational cause and a scientific cure. Yet, as the years passed, the unsettling incidents grew in frequency and intensity, defying all logical explanation. The sanitarium, intended as a sanctuary of healing and enlightenment, had become a place of shadows and fear. Despite the growing evidence of something profoundly wrong, Dr. Blackwood refused to entertain the notion of supernatural influences. He buried himself in his work, seeking refuge in the familiar pages of medical journals and the company of like-minded colleagues. But even he could not escape the insidious whispers that followed him through the halls, growing louder and more insistent with each passing day. Thus, Blackwood Sanitarium stood, a silent sentinel to the hubris of man, its foundations steeped in ancient malevolence. It bore witness to the folly of those who dared to disturb the slumber of things best left undisturbed. This, then, is the beginning of the tale of Blackwood Sanitarium, a tale that would unravel into a tapestry of terror and madness, forever etched into the annals of dark history. The year was 1912, when a new patient arrived at Blackwood Sanitarium, a young woman by the name of Emily Warren. Emily was a delicate creature, frail and haunted, her eyes wide with a terror that seemed to see beyond our mundane reality. She was plagued by severe night terrors and hallucinations, driven to the brink of madness by the relentless visions that assailed her. Emily spoke of a dark man who visited her in dreams, a shadowy figure who whispered dreadful promises and hinted at unspeakable secrets. This dark man, she claimed, had been with her since childhood, growing more persistent and terrifying as she aged. Her family, unable to cope with her deteriorating condition, had entrusted her to the care of Blackwood Sanitarium, hoping that Dr. Blackwood's methods might offer some relief. Upon her arrival, Emily was placed under the direct supervision of nurse Abigail Fletcher, a compassionate and diligent caregiver. Nurse Fletcher noted with growing concern the intensity of Emily's night terrors. Each night, the young woman would awaken, screaming and drenched in sweat, her eyes wide with an unfathomable horror. She spoke in frenzied whispers of the dark man, of his promises to take her away to a place where shadows had substance, and the air was thick with malevolence. Dr. Blackwood, ever the skeptic, dismissed these tales as the product of a disturbed mind. He prescribed sedatives and therapies, convinced that Emily's condition was purely psychological. Yet despite his efforts, Emily's condition only worsened. The dark man, she claimed, was growing impatient, his visits more frequent, and his promises more insistent. One stormy night in October, as lightning split the sky and thunder echoed through the halls, Emily Warren vanished without a trace. Her room, locked from the inside, showed no signs of struggle or forced entry. The window, barred and secure, offered no escape route. It was as if she had simply dissolved into the shadows, leaving behind only the faintest whisper of her terror. A frantic search ensued, the staff scouring every corner of the sanitarium and the surrounding grounds. Yet, despite their efforts, Emily was never found. Her disappearance only intensified the air of dread that hung over Blackwood Sanitarium. Whispers of supernatural forces grew louder, the staff and patients alike speaking in hushed tones of the dark man who had come to claim his promised prize. Nurse Fletcher, shaken to her core, resigned from her position shortly after Emily's disappearance. She spoke of feeling a malevolent presence in the sanitarium, an unseen force that watched and waited. Her once kind eyes now mirrored the same haunted look that Emily had worn, a look that spoke of glimpses into a realm of shadows and dread. Dr. Blackwood, despite his public facade of rationality, could not shake the growing sense of unease. Emily's disappearance remained an enigma, a dark stain on his otherwise illustrious career. He doubled his efforts to maintain order and normalcy within the sanitarium, but the whispers persisted, growing louder and more insistent with each passing day. And so, the tale of Emily Warren became another chapter in the dark history of Blackwood Sanitarium. Her name, now spoken in fearful whispers, became a symbol of the unknown terrors that lurked within the sanitarium's walls. The dark man, a figure of dread and mystery, continued to haunt the dreams of those who remained, a reminder that some shadows could not be dispelled by the light of reason. In the year 1936, Blackwood Sanitarium was undergoing renovations, a project that aimed to restore the institution to its former glory. Amidst the chaos of construction and the shuffling of displaced patients, a hidden chamber was discovered within the walls of Dr. Blackwood's former office. Inside this chamber, the workmen unearthed an ancient, dust-covered journal bound in cracked leather and inscribed with the initials GB. This journal, as it turned out, belonged to Dr. Gerald Blackwood himself. Within its pages lay the secret history of the sanitarium, written in a trembling hand that betrayed the doctor's growing descent into madness. What follows are excerpts from that fateful journal, each entry a step further into the abyss of unspeakable terror. Dr. Blackwood's early entries were those of a man of science, meticulously detailing the treatments and conditions of his patients. But as the pages turned, a darker narrative began to unfold. The doctor wrote of his increasing unease, of the strange phenomena he could no longer dismiss as mere coincidence. He recounted nights plagued by nightmares of grotesque, otherworldly beings, visions that left him drenched in sweat and shivering with an unnamed fear. One particularly harrowing entry described a visit from a group of local indigenous elders. They came bearing grave warnings and ancient artifacts, insisting that the land upon which the sanitarium stood was sacred, a burial ground for their ancestors. They spoke of rituals to appease the spirits and prevent the awakening of something they referred to as Nyarlathotep, a name that seemed to resonate with an ancient, primordial dread. Dr. Blackwood, ever the skeptic, dismissed their warnings as superstitious ramblings. He documented their visit with a mix of curiosity and disdain, convinced that his rational mind would prevail over what he saw as primitive beliefs. Yet, as the days turned to weeks, he found himself haunted by a sense of foreboding he could not shake. The journal took a darker turn as Dr. Blackwood wrote of his own experiences within the sanitarium. He described hearing whispers in the dead of night, voices that seemed to emanate from the very walls. Shadowy figures appeared at the edge of his vision, only to vanish when he turned to face them. His sleep was plagued by visions of a dark figure, one whose presence filled him with an indescribable terror. In his final entries, Dr. Blackwood's once steady hand became erratic, his writing almost illegible. He spoke of an overwhelming darkness within the walls of the sanitarium, a malevolent force that seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. The doctor, once a man of unshakable reason, was now consumed by fear and paranoia. The most chilling entry detailed a night when Dr. Blackwood ventured into the bowels of the sanitarium, drawn by an irresistible compulsion. There, he discovered a hidden chamber, its walls covered in incomprehensible symbols and eldritch carvings. In the center of the room stood an altar, upon which lay a tome bound in what appeared to be human skin. The moment he touched the tome, he was overwhelmed by visions of monstrous entities, beings that defied all rational explanation. Dr. Blackwood's journal ended abruptly with a final desperate scrawl. "The darkness is here. Nyarlathotep has awakened. May God have mercy on our souls." The discovery of this journal sent shockwaves through the staff and remaining patients of Blackwood Sanitarium. The once dismissive whispers of supernatural forces now took on a terrifying reality. The sanitarium, steeped in ancient malevolence, was no longer just a place of healing. It was a portal to the unknown horrors that lay beyond the veil of our understanding. And so, the legend of Dr. Blackwood and his journal became another dark chapter in the history of Blackwood Sanitarium. The name Nyarlathotep was spoken in fearful whispers, a reminder of the ancient and terrible forces that lingered just beyond the edge of our reality. The year 1947 marked a catastrophic event in the annals of Blackwood Sanitarium, an event that would forever stain its history with a dark and indelible mark. It was the night of October 13th, when the heavens themselves seemed to conspire against the sanitarium, unleashing a storm of unprecedented fury. The night was dark, the sky a swirling mass of black clouds, intermittently illuminated by jagged streaks of lightning. Thunder roared like the drums of some ancient, vengeful deity, shaking the very foundations of the earth. Within the forbidding walls of the sanitarium, the atmosphere was thick with an unspoken dread, a tension that seemed to echo the chaos outside. At the stroke of midnight, a terrible scream pierced the cacophony of the storm, emanating from the heart of the sanitarium. The staff and patients, already on edge, were jolted into action. Panic spread like wildfire as they raced through the dimly lit corridors, the flickering lights casting eerie shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. It was then that the fire began. It started in the basement, a place long regarded with unease and superstition. Flames erupted with a ferocity that defied natural explanation, consuming everything in their path with a ravenous hunger. The fire spread rapidly, devouring the wooden beams and ancient stone walls as if they were kindling. As the blaze intensified, so too did the sense of something profoundly wrong. Survivors spoke of a shadowy figure seen wandering the halls just before the fire broke out, a figure that seemed to dissolve into the flames, leaving behind an overwhelming sense of dread. Others claimed to hear an unearthly howl, a sound that was neither human nor animal, echoing through the inferno. Dr. Blackwood, now an old man burdened by years of torment and guilt, fought desperately to save his patients. He was last seen heading towards the basement, his face a mask of grim determination. What he found there, or what happened to him, remains a mystery. His body was never recovered, and his fate is the subject of much speculation and fear. The fire raged on for hours, its glow visible for miles around. By the time the storm subsided and the fire was brought under control, Blackwood Sanitarium was reduced to a smoldering ruin. The once proud edifice, a beacon of hope and healing, was now a charred husk, its corridors filled with the ashes of the past. In the aftermath, the sanitarium was abandoned, its remaining patients transferred to other facilities. The grounds were deemed cursed, and no attempt was made to rebuild. The few who dared to return spoke of a lingering presence, a malevolent force that seemed to watch and wait from the shadows. The official cause of the fire was never determined, though many suspected foul play. Some whispered of the dark man, Nyarlathotep, whose name had been uttered in fearful whispers since the earliest days of the sanitarium. Others believed it was the spirits of those wronged and forgotten, seeking vengeance for their restless souls. Thus, the tale of the fire of 1947 became another chapter in the dark and tragic history of Blackwood Sanitarium. It served as a grim reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the horrors that lie beyond. A veil that, once pierced, can never be fully mended. And so, Blackwood Sanitarium stands as a silent testament to the folly of those who dared to challenge the unknown. Its ruins, a monument to fear and madness. The shadows still linger, and the whispers of the past echo through the night. A chilling reminder of the darkness that once walked its halls. In the years that followed the Great Fire of 1947, Blackwood Sanitarium was left to the ravages of time and nature. The once imposing structure now stood in ruins, a crumbling monument to the horrors that transpired within its walls. Overgrown with ivy and surrounded by the encroaching forest, it seemed as though the earth itself sought to reclaim the land from which it had been wrested. Local legends and whispered tales continued to circulate among the townsfolk, each more chilling than the last. Those who ventured near the ruins spoke of an overwhelming sense of unease, as if unseen eyes were watching from the shadows. The ground itself seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, a lingering echo of the dark forces that had once held sway over the sanitarium. Paranormal investigators and thrill-seekers, drawn by the tales of ghostly apparitions and otherworldly phenomena, often found themselves ill-prepared for what awaited them. Equipment malfunctioned inexplicably, batteries drained in moments, and recordings captured disembodied voices speaking in hushed, indecipherable tones. Many who dared to spend a night within the ruins left forever changed, their minds haunted by the whispers of the past. One such investigator, Dr. Margaret Whitlock, a renowned parapsychologist, undertook a comprehensive study of the sanitarium in 1963. Armed with the latest technology and a team of dedicated researchers, she sought to uncover the truth behind the legends. What she discovered only deepened the mystery. Dr. Whitlock's journals, much like those of Dr. Blackwood before her, detailed experiences that defied all rational explanation. Her team reported seeing shadowy figures moving through the ruins, hearing whispers in languages unknown to them, and feeling an overwhelming sense of dread that seemed to emanate from the very ground beneath their feet. On their final night, they encountered what Dr. Whitlock described as a presence of unimaginable evil, a force that drove them from the ruins in terror. Dr. Whitlock's final entry was a chilling echo of Dr. Blackwood's own descent into madness. The darkness is alive. It remembers. It waits. Her team abandoned the investigation, and Dr. Whitlock herself retired from the field, her once sharp mind now clouded by the horrors she had witnessed. In the decades that followed, The ruins of Blackwood Sanitarium remained untouched, a forbidden place shunned by all but the most foolhardy. Nature continued its relentless encroachment, the forest reclaiming the land inch by inch. Yet, despite the passage of time, the air around the sanitarium remained thick with the same oppressive dread, the same whispers of an ancient evil that refused to be forgotten. To this day, the tale of Blackwood Sanitarium serves as a grim reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the horrors that lie beyond. It is a story of hubris and madness, of the folly of those who dared to challenge forces beyond their comprehension. The ruins stand as a silent testament to the darkness that once walked its halls, a darkness that, though dormant, still lingers, waiting for the day when it will rise again.